What's up, ghouls and gamers? Rusty here with $30 budget vintage, as you know by now. This is honestly one of the hottest and most up-and-coming formats in Magic the Gathering, gaining a ton of traction right now. Channel Fireball article came out pretty recently. You can check that out, link below. Discord's continuing to fill up. We actually just started having a little group of folks out in Asheville, North Carolina that are playing. They met up for a 6-person impromptu tournament at a brewery on Monday, actually, so we got some tournament results from them. So it's kind of spreading like wildfire. I don't know, we just continue to have events, and it continues to go really well, so we're having a good time. I want to revisit my Mystical Teachings Mindsplice Apparatus deck. I played it on Saturday and did fairly well, and then I got to play it in a 14-person tournament. It was Memorial Day, so a little bit smaller of a turnout, but 14 is still pretty good on a touch grass holiday. So while a lot of people were out eating hot dogs with their family and crushing cold cruisers with their pals, drinking beers, we were inside playing Magic. We actually got to cube first, which was very fun. I got to draft Rakdos Sacrifice in my Peasant Cube, which is one of my favorite things. But that's not why you're here. It's not a cube channel, so we won't talk about that. I got to play this updated version of Mindsplice Apparatus Blue-Black Control. I played it to a 3-1 finish. I think I could have won all my matches. It's hard to say if winning my first round would have given me, a worse bracket path, and I can't just say that winning that match would have given me the 4-0, but this deck felt very capable of 4-0ing. So let's take a second, and I'll tell you what I changed in this list. We're actually going to use Moxfield's Compare tool. I don't know if you guys know about that, but it's really useful. Again, not sponsored. We just love Moxfield, and they have the right pricing data for us. I'll tell you what I changed. I'll tell you what I loved and what I didn't love. So this is the current list. It's very similar. A little bit more in on the buyback spells with Spellburst, Whispers of the Muse, and Capsize. Capsize is my win condition. Isn't that fun? I played against someone and I was capsizing him, and at one point he said, so you're just going to keep bouncing my lands, aren't you? And I said, sure am. I love Capsize. I had to cut it from my cube. It was annoying. So originally, let's look at the original list. Actually, deep breath. Let's slow down a little bit. And let's go over this deck. And let's pretend that not everyone watches all the videos. I'm looking to leverage Mindsplice Apparatus here. It's a very powerful mana advantage engine. It's very similar to Wilderness Reclamation, which is actually our Brewmaster's Challenge build-around for May, which is a monthly-ish contest we do in our Discord server, where we encourage people to post deck lists based around a certain card that we think is underplayed or could be used creatively. So anyway, Wilderness Rec is the current one. Voting just went live. And it's very similar in that it's a 4-mana do-nothing card that produces a mana advantage. Kind of differences. Wilderness Wreck gives you the immediate refund. Assuming it resolves, you pay 4 mana on turn 4 using lands, and you get 4 mana. This one, you pay 4 mana, and you get dog water. It just sits there. But, then you're discounting your spells by 1 on the first turn, 2 on the second, yada, yada, yada. The more spells you cast in a turn, the more mana advantage you have generated, right? If you're reducing each spell by 2, if you cast 1 big spell that's reduced by 2, you've saved 2 mana. If you cast 3 medium spells that were all reduced by 2, you've kind of saved 6 mana, right? So that's kind of part of some of the design of this deck, and we're looking to do that by using Mystical Teachings. This is one card that has 8 colorless mana requirement in it, so it's a really great outlet for Mindsplice Apparatus. I'm sure you're no stranger to Mystical Teachings as a deck concept. It's been a popper deck before. I've seen Sultai Wilderness Reclamation lists in Modern. It's glacially slow is the issue. It's good advantage. It's a 2-for-1 if you spend 10 mana on both halves, and you get the right spell, which is a premium, right? We don't mind using Demonic Tutor, even in CEDH, because 2 mana is a fair price to get the right spell. But it still doesn't look good, right? You're paying 4 mana for the Teachings, and then 2 mana for the Heartless Act, and that's like a 6-mana removal spell, and that just does not cut the mustard most of the time. So we're breaking it with Mindsplice Apparatus. It is not uncommon over the course of the game. I did this multiple games to have a Mindsplice Apparatus or a combination of 2 of them with 5 oil counters. which means that your Mystical Teachings cost 1 to play the first half and 1 to play the second half. It doesn't really even feel like you're playing Magic at that point anymore. It's kind of like you're just moving stuff around. You just take whatever cards you want out of your deck. Your opponent tries to do something, and you're just like, you don't get to do that. The spell's resolving? No. Creatures? No. It's really fun. But so let's look back at the previous list. This is the previous list, very similar. Blue-black, Baleful Strixes, counterspells. I still had the Hull Breacher, Commit Memory package, but I had Hullbreaker Horror to win the game. It actually looks like it's gone down in price. It was $570, maybe $470 when I first put it together, but it's $420. That's the number, the funny number. Ha ha ha, the funny number. Still on 3 Mystical Teachings, 3 Mindsplice. I don't know if that's the right number. I never felt like I needed to chain more than 3 Mystical Teachings together to win the game, which makes me not want a 4th. But at the same time, if you have a Mindsplice Apparatus and you don't have a Teachings, it kind of feels bad. So, And similarly, the deck functions without a Mindsplice Apparatus in play. You function, but you're not really pulling ahead, so 3 feels like the right number there as well. Cut the Hieroglyphics, didn't feel super necessary. Split Deluge with the instant speed spell that we'll take a look at. It's an instant speed board wipe for 3 CMC or less. I don't think I like Drown in the Loch in this deck. The original intent was that this is, it's a kill spell and it's a counter spell on the same card. It's nice when you want to get your number of removal spells like Cast Down up, and you want to get your number of counter spells up. The 3 counterspells instead of 4 was actually a budget consideration at the time. It looks like some cards have dropped. I cut the Drown in the Lochs. They felt bad occasionally, even against Martyr Proc, which is a very 1 CMC focused deck. I need my spells to work on turn 2. I can't wait around for them to be live, and I don't want to play Thought Scour. Loose Focus was a budget consideration. That's out now. I think Spellburst took its slot. Sideboard changed pretty significantly. 4 Spell Pierce was overkill to begin with. Lochmere Serpent and Commence the Endgame were just redundant win conditions that were not important. Filigree Silex, I don't mind having a Ratchet Bomb. I got nothing against that. It's useful. It gets things like the Blackstaff of Waterdeep off the board. It's a little bit cute with the potential of removing 10 oil counters to dome your opponent for 10 thing, but it didn't make the cut in the next version. Let's actually look at this comparison. Yeah, so this is what I trimmed. I think I hit on all of that. Swamp came out for Sol Ring. That was a budget consideration and also just a big miss in the first version. This was actually, I think, my first time registering Sol Ring in this format, which is kind of unbelievable. I've played for a year, and I haven't put Sol Ring in a deck, I think. I don't know, if you stalk my page hard enough, you might be able to catch me putting Sol Ring in something, but I don't think I have. Island came out for Castle Vantris. Then in the new version, Dimir Apparatus, Sol Ring came in, like I said, up to 4 counterspells, Castle Vantris. Then there's a couple really cool additions. The win condition became a combination of Spellburst and Capsize. When you have a Mindsplice on 4 oil counters, Capsize becomes blue-blue, make your opponent pick up their shit, and then do it again. When you have Counterspell backing that up, there's not a lot that can beat you, but there are certain circumstances that can beat you. Additionally, Spellburst is not the most embarrassing card in the world on its front side, and it allows you to go from having good control with your Mystical Teachings Mindsplice to having a total ironclad grip on the game and just making your opponent know that they can't ever win. You just buy it back and counter all their spells. Consume the Meek in the main board. It makes sense to have a Mystical Teachings board wipe. This hits a good amount of cards in the format. It was very good against Rhinos. I used it against Transmogrify, which is a very funny deck that we'll talk about. Mission Briefing is mainly here to help find... It's a good card. It helps you get your Capsize back if something weird happens early game. Helps you get Spell Burst back, because if you flash it back with Mission Briefing, you can still get the cards out of the graveyard with Buyback and Mission Briefing, so it's kind of nice to have a second chance. You can also commit Memory to get them back in, so if your one Capsize is Inquisitioned on turn 2, you're not out of luck. You've got 2 methods to get it back, as long as it's not exiled. If it does get exiled, then you have an interesting game. Heartless Act, it helps me make sure that Gifts Ungiven can get me a removal spell, because I'm split between Heartless Act, Cast Down, and March of Wretched Sorrow, and Sudden Edict. So you can theoretically gifts for a 2 removal spell pile, which is relevant. Rewind felt cracked, I gotta say. I paid 4 mana for it on turn 4 against, I think it was a suspended Crashing Footfalls. Footfalls comes off suspend, whatever part of the turn that happens. Just rewind it, then untap, and then have interaction up for the next thing that Team of Rhinos does. You can also, rewind something on turn 4, then deploy your Mindsplice Apparatus, so your turn 4 is not as dead. And once you're on the Mystical Teachings, Mindsplice Apparatus, ooh, we're doing the thing situation, Rewind is just a better version of Counterspell because you're discounting the 2 colorless mana. So you end up in a game state where you have Mindsplice Apparatus sitting in play with 2 counters or something like that, so you're discounting by 2, and you have a Mystical Teaching sitting in your hand, and your opponent says, I'll cast a spell, and you're like, whoa, casting spells? That's not going to happen. Get that out of here. And you're going to Mystical Teachings for an answer to it, right? Having your first Teachings in that situation get Rewind, so you pay 2 for the Teachings, if it's discounted by 2, then you pay 2 for the Rewind, which is the same price you would have paid for your Counterspell. But then you untap all 4 lands, and that's enough to flashback the Teachings to go get your Teachings for your next turn. You untap, your Apparatus is on 3 counters, your Teachings cost 1 mana, and you're just like crazy far ahead. So that all felt really good. Whispers of the Muse, theoretically, if you have 5 Mindsplice counters, 5 oil counters, you can then pay single blue, buy this back, draw a card as many times as you want to pay a blue mana. It didn't come up. It feels a little unnecessary with the rest of the plan coming together. But at the same time, the cost of inclusion is 26 cents, and it's the worst cantrip, right? It's definitely worse than Preordain. I'm only on 2 right now, and that actually felt a little light. But it cycles itself. If you don't need to go on the buyback plan, you just get rid of it. I think the juice is worth the squeeze in this situation. The Hull Breacher plus Commit Memory plan is cool. I was a little scared to go for it. I think I could have really attacked my opponent with that a little bit more. Because obviously Commit Memory and Hull Breacher do the thing where your opponent draws 1 card and you draw 7 cards and make 6 treasure. It's very good. It's even better when Memory is discounted by your Mindsplice Apparatus and you can hold up counterspells. Additionally, you have the option of Mystical Teachings to get Gifts Ungiven. Then Gifts Ungiven can get Commit Memory and another Mystical Teachings as well as some interaction. And then you can use the Mystical Teachings that's in the graveyard to get your Hull Breacher. So it's a 1-card line. It's a 1-card combo, as we call it in CEDH or whatever. Where having access to 1 Mystical Teachings and a lot of mana, which you have pretty often, is enough to commit Hull Breacher your opponent, which is usually good enough to put him in the grave, because keep in mind, you're going to get 6 mana once you finish resolving that off the treasures from Hull Breacher. You're probably already discounted by 2 from your Mindsplice, so then you have cast downs to clean up the board, or you can gifts for Consume the Meek. When I say gifts, I guess I mean Mystical Teachings. So the deck felt really good. Sideboard is a lot more well developed, I think. We'll start at the top. Cut down. It's nice. It's a little bit of a budget investment. I am most scared of aggressive decks. And I guess fast combo, creature-based decks. Thinking green-white, Devoted Druid, Cephalid Breakfast if that were still legal, although it's not. Mono-black as an aggro thing. Probably bring these in versus burn. I brought them in a lot of games, but I still don't want them in the main deck. I refuse to put a card in my deck that might not do anything in a certain matchup. It's sure, sometimes your removal spells aren't good against blue-white control, but having your removal spell just stone do nothing feels really bad. Keep in mind, you do play more than 50% of your games sideboarded, so even if you bring this card in pretty consistently over a couple tournaments, it's still okay to have it sitting on the sideboard. Extirpate felt insane. It came up quite a bit all talk about that. It was very useful. Third March, I gotta be honest, the main role of this was to confuse me when I was deboarding my deck. I would bring it in, and then I would be looking through my deck, and I would see my marches, and I would forget that I brought in one extra, and I would forget what card I needed to pull out. The card's pretty good, though. I like that you can, like, rando gain 8 life off of it, and just really stabilize. It's strong. I don't know if it needs to be here. It could just be, like, another cut down or another Nemesis trap. It's not clear that it's needed. I will say I'm pretty scared of burn. I'm pretty scared of burn with this deck, yeah. Soul Guides are fine. I'm sure someone thinks, why not Ravenous Trap? You can Mystical Teachings for Ravenous Trap. That's a trick. You're never going to do that because you need your Graveyard Hate on turn 1 or turn 2. You're not going to be playing against a deck that you want Ravenous Trap for and have time to Mystical Teachings it. You want Ravenous Trap over Soul Guide Lantern if you need to have it on turn 0 or turn 1. Like, Ravenous Trap is better against Blue Dredge, for example, because oftentimes Blue Dredge will sideboard into Spell Pierce, which can catch your Soul Guide Lantern on the way down. But oftentimes they have to discard the Spell Pierce when they do their dredgy thing with, like, Breakthrough, and then you can Ravenous Trap them. 2 Spell Pierce. You just have Spell Pierces, whatever. Energy Flux, Artifact decks are good. Languish, I would like to be able to go up to more board wipes. I brought this in a couple times. Shadow's Verdict, this one's interesting. It's mostly because I want to beat Will on Martyr Proc, and this is actually part of the reason for my inclusion of Mission Briefing. So Shadow's Verdict is obviously a sorcery, but I think it's pretty good. I think it's good against like red-black Luris type things. I think it has applications versus mono-black aggro, although it could be a little slow. It's nice that it's an answer to their whatever their recursive one-drop of choices right now. Search Dread Wanderer. Thank you. But I really want to be able to Mystical Teachings for Gifts Ungiven, use Gifts Ungiven to put this in the graveyard, and then flashback Mystical Teachings to get Mission Briefing, to then flashback Shadow's Verdict. I know that sounds like a lot of setup and nonsense, but I want to be able to do that against Martyr Proc, because Martyr Proc is good, Will is still doing very well with it, and that deck's very resilient to Languishes. He's currently on a version that has 4 Abiding Grace, 2 Luris, I think 2 Luris main deck, and 2 White Plume Adventurer, although that's kind of a different story. And Shadow's Verdict cleans up everything, every threat in his deck except Sky Hussar, which is not a threat, thank you very much. Cleans up Angel tokens, and it turns off his Abiding Graces, right? You get him Hellbent, and he's relying on Abiding Graces to to cycle like a Thraben Inspector or a Champion of the Parish or something. Not Champion of the... Yeah, Champion of the Parish. Anyway, this just is like lights out against them in a way that Languish is not. And I don't think he has Graveyard Hate for it. I think he's on Thalia's now as kind of his answer to unfair things like this, which is probably good against me. But the Shadow's Verdict inclusion, it's not that much worse than Languish. And I don't hate having the Mission Briefing. And I think the combination of Shadow's Verdict Mission Briefing increases my match win percentage against Martyr Proc. I don't want to say by 25% because that sounds insane. I mean, that number's like clearly not right. It's probably like 7 to 15% just because of how Magic works. That number's also made up, but I feel a lot more comfortable having a Shadow's Verdict. Nemesis Trap, unfortunately, I didn't get to Nemesis Trap anyone. I'm very much excited for it. The joke may be out now that I've talked about it in 2 videos. So the initiative players might be ready for me, but I don't really think they can play around this card. I might go up to 3 or 4 even, just to make them stop playing initiative creatures. Treasure Cruise, because I was scared of 8-rack and mono black discard. I think my plan against like an 8-rack type thing is to trim some of my nonsense like Mindsplice and Mystical Teachings and just have another card that like bails me out of a bad situation. I would play multiple copies of Dig Through Time, and I know that I'm starting to tax my graveyard in that situation, but you really just have to resolve one of these to be like in a comfier position. Castle Vantress was a new addition as well. I wasn't super sold on it just because my island count is getting a little bit low, although Sunken Hollows are islands. But then it's weird because Sunken Hollow cares about basic lands, so going down in a basic land makes Sunken Hollow worse. And Castle of Antris is also not an island, so it makes Choked Estuary worse. So it does affect your mana base. It's not a free roll. But it bailed me out pretty hard in a game against Wally in the finals, or the 4th round. So I'm on board with it right now. I did notice there was a really weird game that started with turn 1 Sol Ring into turn 2 Mindsplice Apparatus, where I realized that I should spend a little bit of my budget, if I have remaining budget, to put a Snow Swamp and a Snow Island in the deck so that I can Gifts Ungiven for 4 untapped lands. It didn't end up costing me too much. I don't know if I would have even taken the line if I had it, because I did draw a couple lands, but it's a situation that could theoretically came up, and it was like a little bit close to coming up. So if I just have this budget, I should probably do that. It's minor, but whatever. We'll get through the matchups. This is already getting a little bit long, so I'll try to wrap this up in the next 10 minutes or so is kind of my plan. Round 1, I played against... I should have led on this. How do I even start? Okay. So there's a father-son duo that plays at our shop. They're very cool, very nice. The son's pretty young. I don't know how young, but he's way more tolerable than I was at that age. He's actually very polite and nice and good to be around. He's also good at Magic, way better than I was at that age. So both of them are awesome to have around. And I think they, kind of testing team it, brew some stuff together. So they roll up, and this week they're both playing the same deck. And this is the deck. It's Transmogrify. And the first thing that jumps out to me is Emrakul the Aeons Torn, the $12 card. Its mana cost is higher than its dollars. This deck, I'm pretty sure you can figure out what it does. It uses non-creature methods of producing creatures. And then it Reality Scramble or Transmogrify or Shifting Shadows them into an Emrakul and makes your opponent die. It's got a lot of acceleration in Seething Song, Sol Ring, Springleaf Drum, even Dwarven Ruins, which is a cool card. So they brewed up this deck, and I guess they just talked about it, and they both decided it was so sweet, so they rolled up with it, and it was, in fact, so sweet. It was so fun to see. I lost to it round 1, and you can't be mad about getting hit by an Emrakul. Game 1, he started out with a couple Dragon Fodders. I languished them because I thought there were like Krenkos in the deck or something. I saw like Springleaf Drum, Dragon Fodder, Krenko's Command, and I was like, languish him, get out of here. And then I think he like Seething Song, activate Mishra's Factory, Transmogrify Mishra's Factory, and I ate shit. I did have an early Sol Ring that game, so I was able to have 4 lands in play, Sol Ring, Baleful Strix, and Mindsplice Apparatus. So I got to actually get Annihilator triggered, flash in Mindsplice Apparatus, sacrifice everything except the Baleful Strix, block with the Baleful Strix, which I've reread this so many times to make sure that was legal. Protection from colored spells. It's not a spell when it's in play, right? We're good. So I block with Baleful Strix, and then they trade, and I have 0 permanence, and he has permanence. I did not rip lands, unfortunately, and then he simply did it again, and I scooped to the second Emrakul. Game 2, I brought in Cut Down, Extirpate, March of Wretched Sorrow. I didn't bring in Soul Guide Lantern. That might have been wrong. And I brought in Spell Pierce. I think I trimmed the fat a little bit, like Mystical Teachings, Mindsplice out. Probably like Commit Memory, Hull Reacher out. I do that a lot, which maybe means I shouldn't play it. I don't know. Maybe like a Baleful Strix out, and I forget what the 6th card was. I was able to extirpate his Reality Scrambles, which was good because that card actually terrifies me. It forces you to have so much interaction. I maybe should have brought in the Soul Guide Lanterns, but I think that when I get to the point in the game where I'm scared of Reality Scramble over everything else that's going on, I think I can usually Mystical Teachings to extirpate it. So that's what I did. And then I killed his creatures a lot, and then I won the game. Game 3. I just kept a really bad hand. My hand was like a piece of 2 mana interaction, like a Heartless Act or something, and maybe a counterspell of some type. And I had like Sunken Hollow, Castle Vantris, and I kept it on 7, which is just not correct looking back. He was on the play. His deck is clearly like going to do its thing on turn 3 most of the time. I don't know if it can do it turn 2. Probably with the Sol Ring it can do it turn... I don't want to think about it. Probably can do it on turn 2. But I feel like this deck has it a lot on turn 3 because there are essentially 8 Shifting Shadow kind of counts. It's a little more interactable because I can untap on my turn 3 and deal with it. But there's essentially 12 copies of this, 12 copies of this, Faithless Looting to set it up, and then something like 12 copies of Acceleration. So it's going to be turn 3 a lot of the time. So my hand just was like noticeably too slow, and there also weren't any huge appeals. Keep in mind, post-board, I brought in Cut Downs, March, Spell Pierces, so I'm going up 5 interactive spells that are all 1 mana, and I'm already pretty well set on 2 here, 2 here, 2 here, 1 here. Not really set an Edict because there's protection. So I guess my point is, I should have mulliganed to 6, and I died, and I deserve to die. So I took that as my loss. Round 2, I played against a Systemic Toxic deck. It's built around Venerated Rot Priest, which is very cool to see. It's kind of like a variant Infect. I love the inclusion of Croak and Counterpart. I think this card's very, very cool. I think that leveraging Once Upon a Time is always going to be powerful. It's just a good card. I was pretty able to pick this apart. Game 1, I think I got up as high as 6 poison counters, but I felt like it was pretty well under control, so I didn't mind going up to it. But without knowing the full context of his deck, it's a little scary. Like Prologue to Phyresis is kind of scary. But I was able to get there game 1 just through interaction. Game 2, pretty similar. I brought in Cut Down. I brought in Extirpate because I really felt like the deck was built around Venerated Rot Priest because of the Croak and Counterparts kind of indicated that to me. And I don't mind having it for the Croak and Counterparts themselves. Brought in March. Probably brought in Spell Pierce. Who can say? Trimmed on Languishes, maybe a Baleful Strix or something. And I was able to interact a couple times. Then I was able to actually extirpate the Rot Priest, which made me feel pretty darn safe. And then we just went to a capsize lock from there. Round 3, I was playing against good friend and roommate Andrew on Teamer Rhinos. He actually just bought Chris's list. It's a very beautiful deck. Chris is a gamer who enjoys nice looking cards. So all of these are like the best version of them. It's like Secret Lair. Okay. Oh, this is not my account, so I can't change it. It's like all the Secret Lairs wherever possible. Really beautiful deck, so I'm glad it's still around. I'm glad it's still assembled. Very scary matchup. For those of you who haven't seen this deck before, it's like Teamer Rhinos in Modern, except less free interaction and more free mana. We got Simian Spirit Guide and Elvish Spirit Guide, full playsets. Incubation Incongruity on turn 1 digs 5 cards deep for either a Shardless Agent or a piece of acceleration to get there. So you're pretty reliably cascading very quickly. Additionally, there's some Heater 3-drops in Eruth, Faldorn, and Malanthrope. These can all be cascaded into off Bloodbraid Elf some percentage of the time. Because if you think about it, Bloodbraid Elf is either going to hit... Well, it hits Bone Crusher, Spirit Guides. Alright, so Bloodbraid has a decent amount of whiffs on this, but it's still a fine threat, and it does what it does pretty well. Malanthrope was pretty cool. Anyway, game 1 was tough and scary. I believe I was able to tutor up my 1 copy of Consume the Meek, and it was very good because if we look at the numbers on his deck, most of them are below 3. Cleans up the Footfalls tokens. This is the game where I think I was able to unwind a Footfalls and then go from there, so it felt pretty good. Then game 2, he had a pretty deep mulligan to 4 or so. We played a bit of a game, and then I took it down. Round 4, I played against my pal Wally on 5-color Niv to Light. I don't know if this deck's been talked about in a while. This deck is seriously sweet. It might have more 1-ofs than my Mystical Teachings deck, which is pretty impressive, so good on you, Wally. Obviously, this deck is looking to leverage Niv Mizzet Reborn along with Bring to Light. I'm sure you guys are familiar with that strategy. So with that in mind, there's some heaters to tutor with Bring to Light, including like Time Wipe, Valky, God of Lies, because you can Bring to Light and then cast Tibalt Cosmic Imposter. That was a big thing in Modern for a second. And then it's also built around a bunch of 2-color cards that Niv Mizzet produces a lot of card advantage. Very cool deck. Love to see a battle included. Then notably, the mana base might look like trash because it's a bunch of guild gates, but it's actually not trash. I don't know how to tell you that any clearer. The binder that holds it all together is Gone Gate. This card's actually insane. It makes your gates functional lands. It's amazing. It doesn't fix for any colors on its own, but it's generally going to do what you need it to. It's tutorable off of Open the Gates as well, which is very useful. I actually think that the Gates mana base in some form is a pretty good 3 to 4 color mana base. I was actually thinking about submitting my own Wilderness Reclamation list built around Gates. I think that's a kind of cool concept. It fixes the problem of, like, for Wilderness Reclamation, you kind of want to be Sultai for Mystical Teachings, and I think Gates are a good way to do that. Anyway, I think Gates are good. Notably, there's also Maze's End tucked in here as a alternate win condition, which unfortunately does come up. Game one, I think that I just interact with the right pieces. I had turn 1 Sol Ring once, maybe twice this match. I think game 2 and game 3 I had turn 1 Sol Ring, which I had turn 1 Sol Ring a lot this night. I think I had like 3 or 4 turn 1 Sol Rings, which felt really good. But yeah, game 1 I didn't interact with like his mana production very much, and then I think I interacted with a couple Nivs and was eventually able to lock him out with Capsize or something. Game 2 was interesting. It was he was on the play. I think he got out from under me with a Niv Mizzet and a board of like Jensen's and Wayfarers and stuff. So I had to deal with the small board. I had to deal with the small board, and there was also a sideboard, or there was the main board Knight of Autumn. There was a Dryad Militant at some point and a Meddling Mage that were kind of affecting me. Then Niv Mizzet came down, so there were small creatures and a big creature, and it was really tricky. And I got to a point where I was pretty comfortable. He didn't have much going on board. He still had some cards in hand, and I had Capsize discounted down to 2 mana. And I think I got a little overzealous with my Capsize, and he started pressuring me with Maze's End is what happened. Because this card does win the game eventually. So I think I capsized like Angel Token, Jensen Carthelian. And I think I tapped out to capsize his Maze's End with the idea that it would keep him off a land for another turn, which at the time felt like a good idea because I felt like I was under pressure from the Maze's End. But he was only at 7 or so he was only going to 8, so I wasn't actually in that much danger. And then he was able to slam a Bring to Light against me while I was tapped out and get Unmoored Ego and actually take my Capsize. Now, this is one of the concerns of having like a kind of one win con deck. These Lost Legacy Unmoored Ego cards do exist in the format. So he took my Capsize, and typically I don't think that's that big a deal. I thought about playing like a Torrential Gear Hulk as a way to beat down, or even something crazy like a Pearl Lake Ancient, just to speed my clock up a little bit. Because if Capsize gets ripped, I have to win the game with a combination of Baleful Strixes, Hull Breacher, and Creeping Tar Pit, or Creepy T as I like to call him. So my Capsize got ripped, and I was pretty well in control of the game. I had enough mana and access to like my teachings and things that the board was clear. I could have gone for a Spell Burst lock. I had sufficient mana that I could, even if he held up like 3 spells for the same turn, I could still Spell Burst all of them. So I felt like I could beat any combination of spells that were cast, and I could beat like creature lands. I just exactly couldn't beat I couldn't beat Maze's End once I was capsized. So I scooped it up, and he got the Maze's End dub, which is really exciting. It's cool that this justifies the $1.78. I love seeing that kind of thing, and it was a cool moment overall. Game 3, I think I had turn 1 Sol Ring into turn 2 Mindsplice Apparatus. I think that's right. No, I didn't. I just had turn 1 Sol Ring. We hung out, traded some resources for a little bit. I remember specifically on turn 4, I didn't have a lot of action in my hand, and I passed with, I guess, some interaction up. I had Counterspell for sure, and I maybe had some other stuff. I had 4 lands, Sol Ring, so 6 mana available, and I had 1 card in my graveyard, some piece of interaction. I also had Dig Through Time in my hand as the only piece of gas. Dig Through Time is notably 8 mana. I had 1 in the graveyard, 4 lands, and Sol Ring, so I had 6 mana plus 1 Delve. So I couldn't cast my Dig Through Time, so I was going to like Counterspell. Counterspell was going to be my whole turn if he cast something worth counterspelling, or I was just going to pass, through his turn and not use my mana. But then he cast, I thought this was really funny actually. He cast a Knight of Autumn, and I knew it was gunning for my Sol Ring because there wasn't anything else going on. There was no Mindsplice, and I had the option to counterspell it, but I felt like I was fine on mana and I was light on interaction and gas, so I actually let the Knight of Autumn hit the board, blow up my Sol Ring. I floated 2 mana in response, and then I had 4 lands, 2 counterspell mana, and 2 cards in my graveyard. 4 plus 2 plus 2 is 8, and I actually got to fire off my dig through time instead of doing nothing on my turn, and I felt really good. I felt sneaky, I felt smart, my brain was enormous, it was incredible, everyone clapped, Albert Einstein, Facebook memes, it was great. Then from there, we played a kind of long, tight game. We went to turns, and eventually I was able to assemble a Capsize lock on him in turn 1 of turns, I think. I don't think I was going to be able to close it out with a combination of Creeping Tar Pit and Hull Breacher. I think I probably messed up somewhere. I don't know. It feels like I could have, but at the time I wasn't able to do that. But I was able to... I think I Gifts Ungivened and tossed my Capsize in the graveyard, and then then Mission Briefinged it back or something. I forget exactly why that was the play. But Wally very kindly chose to scoop to the Capsize lock on turn 1 of turns, even though I think with my deck configuration I wasn't actually going to close it out from a damage perspective and would have taken the draw. So it's very kind of him to do that. He certainly didn't have to. When you play decks like this, you do have to account for the clock. You got to play fast and accept that your win condition's pretty slow. So that was very kind of him and definitely unnecessary, but appreciated. So I was able to lock out a 3-1. We're 4 weeks into the league. It's a 5-week league. 6th is the top 6 for all the prize payout. I've gone 3-1, 3-1, 2-2, 3-1. I think I'm currently ranked 2nd behind Chris, who went 4-0, 4-0, 4-0, 1-3. So it is possible to have a bad night on mono black nights. It sounds like he got a pretty bad series of variants. I heard some of his bad beats between rounds, and it seemed like things just were not turning his way all night, which is how it goes sometimes. But so this league's been going really well. I think that these changes to the deck all felt really good. This is a much better version of this deck than the one I played on 527. This one was not it. It was close, but it had some mistakes. This version is certainly better, and I'm pretty confident to say that this deck is good enough in this format. I don't know if the exact configuration is right. 2 Preordains feels weird. I felt a little light on cheap cantrips that find the right pieces. Again, I don't know if Whispers of the Muse is necessary. Some people want me to play 1 copy of Factor Fiction in addition to my Teachings and Deluge. I don't think that's... I don't like it, but maybe I'll try it. It's probably good. It's good against 8-rack. It's probably fine. But yeah, I think this deck's really strong. I think that the core is powerful. Mindsplice plus Mystical Teachings are a match made in heaven. You can definitely make some good stuff happen. Blue-black has a decent mana base. There's plenty of budget to work with. You could argue Capsize isn't the correct win condition. I could be convinced of that potentially, but no, I probably couldn't be convinced. I love Capsize. So anyway, this is the list. If you're just getting into the format or you're just starting to check it out, definitely something worth considering. I think this is very cool and unique. People love Mystical Teachings, and there's a lot to like about this deck. That's all I got for now. We do have another Spell Table tournament coming up on, let me check what month comes next. June 8th. June is a month after May, so it'll be June 8th. My good buddy Wolf GG, or Corey as humans call him, is going to be hosting on his stream and commentating with me. So I'll drop a link to his stream below. You can check that out. Very fun guy, very good commentator. We've done a bit before, and we always have a good time. So whether you can play or just hang out, you should definitely tune in. I know at the last... I was really happy with this. At the last Spell Table tournament, we had 10 people. Scuffle and I did commentary for it. And within our Discord, we have the breakout tables that everyone plays in. And then as they finish up their matches, there's a players meeting lobby it's a voice chat that they hang out in. And apparently people were just hanging out and watching the stream, kind of doing peanut gallery commentary and chatting. And that made me really happy because it's kind of tough to feel connected in an online community sometimes. We just have text posts. We're just sending each other Scryfall searches and like deck lists and stuff. I really like that, we're getting to have that human connection through the Discord. So if that's something you're into, definitely enter into the Spell Table tournament. If not, just come hang out and chat and watch. We got some big things coming up as far as Spell Table tournaments, more information to come on that, but we got some big plans, big dreams as far as the format goes. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, I hate to ask, I know it's like the content creator thing, please like and subscribe, but like I said, we're trying to make some big moves and get this format on people's radar. Having more subscribers really helps for the optics of it, and I think will help us break into kind of some new levels of getting this onto the larger Magic scene. So, just toss a subscribe down there if you don't mind. Hang out, play some online events, and keep brewing, keep dreaming, keep enjoying $30 budget vintage MTG.